scriptures quite extensively and find some of his arguments compelling. Go with me to Genesis 25, because our Torah portion actually begins in Genesis 25, verse 9. And it starts off with, in Genesis 29, Ve'elei Toledot, these are the generations. And as I've said before, in Genesis we have 10 of these, demarking sections of the book of Genesis. There's 10 of them total, and they'll translate this genealogy or generations. These are the generations, or this is the genealogy. So this one starts off, and Be'elei Toledot, this is the generation of Isaac. Okay? So we're talking about the descendants of Isaac. And what's interesting is, here again we have a matriarch who is barren. And he prays for her, and God gives her a child, tells her that there's going to be children born to her. In fact, she's going to have twins. And what's interesting is it says this in verse 23, the Lord gives her a prophecy. And we should always watch whenever we have these prophecies, because he says to her, and he only tells Rivka this, he says, 2 nations are in your womb, 2 peoples shall be separated from your body. 1 people shall be stronger than the other, and then it says this, and the older shall serve the younger. Okay. Now Rabbi Foreman asked this question, what kind of twins were these? Because you have 2 different types. You have fraternal, and you have identical, thank you. He argues, you guys can go back and listen to his argument, he argues that they're identical twins, not fraternal. They share the same placenta. And that what's going on here is that this struggle in the womb, they struggle in the womb. And that it portrays their struggle later on. I'm not going to get into his arguments right now on that, but I think it's fascinating what he's having to say there. Here's what happens. If you look at verse 24, Genesis 25, it says, so her days were fulfilled for her to give birth. Indeed, there were twins in her womb. And the first came out red. He was like a hairy garment all over. So he comes out and he's completely covered with hair. Looks like he's fully covered. He's brought on there. And Agor, his brother, came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel. So their names are based on what happens to them at birth. So it says, so the boys grew, and Esau was a skilled hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a mild man dwelling in tents. And Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game. So there's a reason that's given for why Isaac likes Esau. And all it says of Rebekah is Rebekah loved Yaakov. It's almost as if that Rebekah loves unconditionally, whereas Isaac loves because there's a reason. He has a reason. It's physical, whereas it seems his wife loves just because. There's no reason given. But here's something fascinating that the translations don't bring out. If you look at how they're named, if you go back to verse, here just a second. Well, here's not that good. So the names are given here. We find here. Afterward, the brother came out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel. So Esau is the idea of one who's hairy, fully formed. Achev, heel. And what do we know about the heel? The heel is kind of crooked. Okay, so he's a heel grabber. Okay, so Yaakov comes from this idea of Achev, from the one who grabs the heel. But what's interesting is, if you look at the text, when it comes to the naming of these boys, that it says that they named the child Esau, and he named the child Yaakov. Okay, so in verse 26, it's the idea is that the first child is named by both parents. The second child is named by one of the parents. And it kind of indicates that maybe Rivka wasn't overly thrilled with the name, but she didn't have as much part of it anyway. We know that much. Okay? All right. So look at chapter 26 of Genesis. And let's ask this question. If you look at this, we're going to talk about Isaac here for just a moment, because this is about Isaac. There are these wells that he digs that Abraham, his father, had dug before him, and they had been stopped up. The Philistines and others had stopped them up. They had filled them with dirt. And here's the question that has to be asked. Let's go to verse 12, chapter 26. It says, Then Isaac departed from there and pitched his tent in the valley of Gerar and dwelt there. And Isaac dug again the wells of water which they had dug in the days of Abraham his father, for the Philistines had stopped them up after the death of Abraham. And he called them by the names which his father had called them. And Isaac's servants dug in the valley and found a well of running water there, but the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's herdsmen, saying, The water is ours. And they're all stopped up. They weren't digging them out. But now that he's dug them out, well, these are ours. So he called the name of the place of the well Yizchak, because they quarreled with him there. Then he dug another well, and they quarreled over that one also. So he called its name Sitnah. And he moved from there and dug another well, and they did not quarrel over it. So he called its name Rehoboth, because he said, For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land. So the word Rehoboth means wide. In fact, many of the streets in Israel are called Rehoboth, because it's a wide lane. Okay? So but the question is this. The first well that he digs, or redigs, cleans it out, digs it up, and there's a quarrel. Then there's a second well dug, and there's a quarrel over that one. And Isaac says, okay, you can have this one too. But then the third one, they don't go after him on this one, and they allow it to go. And the question is, let's ask the question, why? Why were they okay after the third well? At least the question has to be asked. Because they stopped saying to him, this is our well. And there's no more contention regarding these wells that his father, Abraham, had dug. You may want to venture a guess. Yeah.
They're probably getting too thin in population for themselves. They can't go. They're weaker at this point.
Okay. Possibility? Yeah, could be. Huh?
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
2 out of 3 ain't bad. We got 2 out of 3. That's good. Let's.
Third time's a charm.
Yeah.
Was the third one still on their land?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Still in their area. And gone outside of their.
So this has nothing to do with the land that Abraham purchased.
No.
It's different. Okay.
What do you think? Yeah, Jimmy.
The water wasn't any good.
The water wasn't any good. Okay. We're not told that, but it's a possibility. Or they try the water and go, oh, this don't have this one. It's not good water. Possible.
The Lord changed their hearts.
The Lord changed their hearts. Okay. I'm actually more aligned with that one. We'll talk about that.
I think that they realized that he was able to make the land produce.
Okay, he was able to make land produce. Here's the question you have to ask.
He was blessed by the Lord, and they knew that goodness would come if he was allowed to stay in the land.
Okay, all right, that's a possibility, but here's the question. Abraham digs the wells, and they stop up the wells. They're not the ones redigging them.
Right.
So why are they taking them back after he redigs them? Because if we're thinking through this, they wait till Isaac redigs these wells and goes down and that's a lot of work. And he unstops these wells, now they're producing water again. They weren't doing that. They take the first one, he goes into the second one, digs it out, they take that one. And Isaac just says, okay, you can have it. Get to the third one, he digs it out, and they stop. Why not just take that one? Yeah. Hold on, one year, and then I'll go. You're good.
When there was a drought in the land, and Isaac was going to go down to Egypt, and the Lord told him not to go.
Right.
And he stayed there. And the land that he tilled, even during the drought, brought forth 100-fold for his planting.
Yes, it did. And he's blessing the land, there's no doubt about
The
that.
land that they tilled only brought forth tenfold.
Yes,
And so they had this in the back of their mind, hey, whatever this guy does
yeah,
is going to benefit us.
yeah, I think that's there, that's in play, for sure. All right,
Each well had a name,
yes,
and each name had a meaning.
yes, it did, and both of them talk about contention or struggle. Okay, yeah, Jerry,
You know, it's rather typical of the Arabs in that area. Israel bought property in Good City owned in the early 1900s. Built orchards, terraced walls, gardens, dug wells, and flourished. And the Arabs drove them out. And they came back and did it again. The Arabs drove them out. And the Arabs came back again, and this time they really butchered them. This is 1947. But when each time that those Arabs came back, they tore down the rock walls, stopped up the wells, destroyed the houses, instead of living in them themselves, taking advantage of that situation. All they would do is just destroy. And this is typical of a stopping up the wells.
yeah, so they stop up, why would you stop up a well?
Because you're ignorant.
They're jealous.
I mean, why would you stop up
Selfishness.
a well? It makes no sense, because you need water.
But you
Okay?
don't wanna, you
No
don't
matter where
wanna,
you are.
but you
Go
don't
to
wanna,
a car that, so go, but let me ask this question.
but they don't wanna share it.
Let me ask this question. So, just think in terms of percentages. What percentage of the problems that we have in life, just think out loud, think in your head, don't say anything out loud. What percentage of the problems that occur in our lives are brought about by our own poor choices?
All of them?
Don't get it personal.
So,
90%.
I want you to read something. Now listen to this. Go with me and look at verse 3. Genesis 26:3. With regards to Isaac, look what God says to Isaac. He says in verse 3, sojourn in this land. Sojourn in this land. That's gur, from which we get the noun form ger, a person who sojourns. One who is transient. Nothing permanent. Now watch verse 6. It says, so Isaac dwelt in Gerar.
Not sojourning anymore.
What happened?
That was our
He decided to stay there. Okay? He's told, don't make anything permanent. Be transient. In verse 6, it says he settles there. He's building. He's putting down roots. And God had told him, don't do that. Let me suggest to you that the reason the first well doesn't go to him and the second well doesn't go to him is because it's not until he gets to that third well that he goes, you know what? I'm going to start pitching a tent again. And he uproots, and then God says, okay, now that you're obedient to me, we can move forward. Okay. Pitch a tent, sojourn, don't build. That's not what I wanted you to do. We've said this in the past. When you look at commandments in the scriptures, if God commands something, you should see the same command in the same narrative, saying the person did what God, used the same word. Using the same word. Okay? In this situation, what happens? Sojourn, he says, God says in the command, and he decides that he will build and stay. So
the Hebrew word for that is yoshev, isn't that sit or dwell?
you dwell.
I mean, but we use the same word in a sukkah, and we don't live in a sukkah.
Well, but there's evidence here besides.
Sukkah is a temporary dwelling.
Yeah, it should have said he sojourned. It says that he sojourned. Instead it says he dwelt. And there's evidence in the text that he's building roots. So I think that it's, my point is that I think that there's evidence here of why God stops, why these two wells he undigs or redigs go to someone else. And it's after he makes a change, that God says, okay, now it's very well, you can keep it. And they stop trying to mess with it at that point. All right, now, look with me at chapter 27. Chapter 27. And this is the text that's dealing with the deception of Isaac by his son. Okay. So look at verse 27. Now it came to pass that Isaac was old, and his eyes were so dim that he could not see, that he called Esau his older son and said to him, my son. And he answered and said, Emery, here am I. And now Isaac cannot see, but I think one can make the argument that when you cannot see, this is my observation of people I've been around who lose one sense, other senses start to compensate. Your ability to hear things and your ability to smell things is heightened because your other senses compensate for the loss of one. Okay. In fact, I had a number of, in college, we had a school attached to the college that was a college of the deaf, so they cannot hear. But they were very sensitive to things they saw and to vibrations. They would listen to music by putting their hand on the piano, and they could feel the vibrations of the music. So their feeling was heightened. Their ability to see was heightened, it seemed like at times, even though they could not hear. So these other senses compensated for this loss. Now look what happens. Verse 2, he said, behold, now I am old, I do not know the day of my death. Now therefore please take your weapons, your quiver and your bow, and go out the field and hunt game for us. And make savory food such as I love, and bring it to me that I may eat, that my soul may bless you before I die. Now Rivkah was listening when Isaac spoke to Esau his son. We should stop here. We know the end of the story. We read the end of this story. And for a moment, I want to stop and just say, let's stop in the middle of the story for a moment here, and before we get to the end, and just listen to it for what it's. Because the people in the story don't know the end. We know it because we can read it in the narrative on, but they don't know what's going to happen at the end. Now look what happens here. Now Rivkah spoke to Jacob, her son, saying, indeed I heard your father speak to Esau your brother, saying, bring me game and make savory food for me, that I may eat it and bless you in the presence of the Lord before my death. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to what I command you. Go now to the flock and bring me from there 2 choice kids of the goats, and I will make savory food from them for your father, such as he loves. Then you shall take it to your father, that he may eat it, and that he may bless you before he dies. Okay. Now, does she say anything in that about deceiving Isaac? No, she doesn't. She doesn't say anything in there about this being a deception. Okay. So if you just stop right there, she doesn't say, we're going to deceive your dad. Okay? Yeah.
The prophecy that was given before they were born,
Yes.
of that one would serve the other. Didn't Isaac know that prophecy? Did he know of that prophecy?
We're not told that Isaac knows about that prophecy.
I know we're not told there, but
She does.
and this
She does.
And this is probably what influenced.
No doubt. But let me ask you, so let's do this scenario then. So she's given this prophecy. Does the prophecy that she's given, that the older will serve the younger, would the prophecy justify deception?
No.
Because that's how some people have read this. Okay, so let me do a scenario that this. Let's say that you believe you have a dream. And in this dream, God comes to you and he says, I want you to run for, you're sleeping in your bed, you get this dream, you say, God says, I want you to run for political office, and to show you that a good sign of faith that this is what my will is. When you awaken, there will be $200,000 under your pillow to start your campaign. And you wake up, and you reach under your pillow thinking, no, it's just a dream. Reach under your pillow, and there's $200,000 there. So you think, well, I heard from God. I heard from God, and I should start my political campaign. So you go out and you start your political campaign, and, I should tell you, in the dream, God tells you when you enter this political campaign, you are going to win. You're going to win. Okay? That's why I'm doing this, because you're going to win. Guaranteed. Okay? So you start your campaign, and it gets down to the day of right before the day of the vote, and one of your political advisors comes to you and says, you are 10 points behind. You're 10 points behind in the race. Doesn't look good. However, I know somebody at the elections office, and for the right amount of money, $200,000, they can manipulate the numbers on the computer, and you'll actually come out the winner. They can fudge the numbers. Would you do that?
No.
Because you have the promise that you're going to win, but you're behind in the race.
Don't you have faith in God that He was going to deliver His promise without having to cheat? Because God doesn't cheat.
Okay?
So God already gave you $200,000. He gave you the means to be successful. You just have to put your faith in Him. He
Okay.
didn't give you the $200,000.
So that's why this thing with Rebecca doesn't work. Just because she's given the promise doesn't mean that you can manipulate to make sure that the promise comes true. Okay?
That's not a promise.
This goes to the reading of the Haftorah, which two sons again, deceiving a father, but waiting till God moves. Right?
But then again, God does not condemn Rebecca for doing it.
No,
There's nothing in Scripture that says.
I agree.
I know.
Let me suggest to you that Rivka, was hoping that her son would go in and just try to present his case for why he should be the one blessed. Okay, so from what we've known beforehand, what would, if Isaac just goes in, Jacob just goes in, what arguments can he make to Isaac that he deserves to be the one who is blessed?
Well, he wouldn't be able to because he's already predisposed to his other son.
Well, let's say he's gonna make a case to Isaac that he should be the one who's blessed. What case can he make?
Your name means supplanter. Hey. I don't know.
All right, we'll hold that question. Come back to it. Yeah.
Isn't what God saying to Rebecca? It's not a prophecy, it's a fact. He told her that the younger or the older would serve the younger. It has nothing to do with prophecy. God doesn't prophesize. He tells you the truth the first time and the only time.
Well, it is a prophecy in the sense that it hadn't happened yet in time. It's still, he's telling us about their birth, and this is going to be this is going to happen in the future. So God is telling the future here.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Okay, so Rebecca says to Isaac, Jacob, go in and here's what we'll just say to your dad. Okay. Now, notice that Jacob doesn't have any problem with the idea. He has a problem with the idea that it might not work. If we were putting odds on this, what are the odds that Yaakov can convince Isaac that he is Esau? What are the odds? Because this is what he...
50-50. That's good.
50-50? All right. So,
50-50.
I don't think so either.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think he already knew because you said his senses were heightened.
Yeah, now watch what happens. Okay, so
And
let's,
he asked, who are you?
yes, okay. Go and look with me now at verse 11. And Jacob said to Rivkah his mother, look, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a skinny man. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall seem to be a deceiver to him. And I shall bring a curse on myself and not a blessing. Okay? So what if I go in there and he says, you know, what are you doing in here? And I seem to be a deceiver to him. And he uses that word, not Rivkah. Okay? She wants him to go in there and just present the case for why he should be blessed. Okay? Now look what his mother says. Notice he doesn't have a problem with the concept of deception. He has a problem with the idea that it's not going to work. Look at verse 13. But his mother said to him, let your curse be on me, my son. Obey my voice and go get them for me. And he went and got them and brought them to his mother, and his mother made savory food just as his father loved. Then Rebekah took the choice clothes of her elder son, Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And she put the skins of the kids of the goats on his hands and on the smooth part of his neck. Then she gave savory food and the bread which she had prepared in the hand of her son Jacob. In the Hebrew scriptures, anytime someone tries to wear the clothes of another person, you know it's going to fail. These are Esau's clothes. These are Esau's clothes. But why does she do this? She does this to give confidence to her son that, you know, he can pull this off. Just wear the clothes. Fine. If you need to wear the clothes, wear the clothes. Okay? All right.
But there's another reason, the smell of the clothes.
Yeah, just smell the clothes.
Now she's being deceptive.
And the feel. I think, though, what's interesting is, at the very end of this, she says, Rivkah to Yaakov, why did you do this? You think she has said, what, you know, we failed in this. She throws Yaakov under the bus and says, this was on you. Okay? All right, so watch what happens. So Isaac sends Esau out to find game. He expects it to take some time, but he expects the one that's going to come back is going to be Esau. Now look what happens. So, verse 18, so he went to his father and said, my father. Okay. I should mention this. One of the things that rarely changes over time, no matter how much we age, one of the things that doesn't change about us physiologically is our voice. The voice, no matter how old, go from the time way back all the way through, there's very little difference in voice. Okay? Remember, he's got to, because he cannot see, heightened smell, heightened hearing. Okay? So now, if Yaakov is going to pull this off, he's got to sound like Esau, which he doesn't do a very good job of. We know that because look what happens. So he said, here am I, who are you, my son? When you hear that, you think that he's asking for identity. I put in my notes that idiomatically, when you ask someone, who are you, and you're expecting the person, you're not asking for their identity, you're asking how did things go. And I give you in the notes that when Ruth comes back to Naomi, Ruth and Naomi have lived together for over 10 years, and they've gone from Moab to Bethlehem together. Naomi knows who Ruth is. So when Ruth comes back from the threshing floor, Naomi says, in the feminine form, who are you? I.e., how'd it go? Not don't identify yourself. And we know that because Ruth doesn't say, I am Ruth, your daughter-in-law. She says, she proceeds to tell her what happened at the threshing floor. So, when you say, who are you? You could be asking for a person's identity. Who are you? Well, my name is Bob. I'm from, okay. Personal identity, or you could say, to a person you already know, you could say, who are you? That is, how do things go? So, expecting Esau to come back, he says, who are you?
But he says, I'm Esau.
And but what he should have heard was, oh, the hunt went really well. Things went great. Look what he says. He says, I am Esau, your firstborn. That's not what I was asking for. Of course you're Esau, my firstborn. I was expecting you. I just sent you away to get game. Of course you were coming back. So that's who I expected back in here. I don't need you to reintroduce yourself. I know you're my son. I know you're Esau, I know you're my son. But let me suggest to you that at this point, Yaakov is trembling. He's flying loose here. Because look what he says. He says, I have done just as you told me. Please arise, sit, and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me. But Isaac said to his son, how is it that you have found it so quickly, my son? I mean, you went out, you hunted game, and you dressed it, and you cooked it all. I mean, wow.
Swanson's.
That's quick. I mean, this thing must have just dropped in your lap, skinned itself, and cooked itself. It's too quick.
So he kind of already knows that this is not his son.
Yeah.
And he already knows probably what the prophecy is.
We don't know that he knows. We don't know that he knows. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. He can tell us.
Okay.
But my point is this.
He already knows.
There's things that aren't adding up. Then look what happens. Isaac said to Jacob, please come near that I may feel you, my son, whether you're really my son Esau or not. You think he has doubts?
I think he was questioning Jacob to see whether or not Jacob was finally going to say, no, I'm not.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Because he constantly said, are you my son? Esau, are you my son?
Right.
It's not the voice of Esau.
Yes. Right. Well, yeah, absolutely. Look what happens. So he says, so Jacob went near to Isaac his father, and he felt him and said, the voice, and he said, by the way, and he said, many times in the Hebrew scripture, the Vayomer, and he said in his heart, it's short period, he said in his heart, or he thought. Okay, he's not saying this out loud. He's thinking to himself, the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. Esau is a man of the field. He's a man who's about the hands, who's a doer. Okay? He's a hunter. He goes out and he does things with his hands. You have this other one who's a man of words. Yaakov is a man of words. He's a speaker. He's not much a doer. Okay? So it's about the hands versus the speech. Okay? And Yaakov and Isaac says, man, this sounds like Yaakov, but feels like Esau. Smells like Esau.
But one basic thing is, it's God's plan.
Yes.
God fulfilled His promise.
Yeah, but the question you have to ask is this the way God wanted it to happen?
He didn't stop it.
Yeah, but just because God doesn't stop it, does that mean that's his plan?
I don't think he wants
Well, who are we to question His plan?
Well, I think if you're using deception, I don't think that's the plan. I don't think God, we know that, I'll tell you how we know this, because at the very end of this, he has to flee.
Yeah.
He has to flee from his brother, he creates anger in his brother, and he ends up having to flee. If it's done,
But God protects them.
oh, absolutely. But you know what? Does God's protection of us mean that it's okay if we do wrong? I mean, God protects all of us when we do wrong, but that doesn't mean we should we sin that grace may abound? I say no. So just because God goes along with some things doesn't mean that he is in agreement that it's the right way to go. Sometimes he lets the consequences of what we do come to the forefront. Yeah. One of the two that we
Take, for example, Abraham and Sarah. God promised Sarah and Abraham a son, Isaac, but yet it didn't happen as fast as they thought. So Sarah takes it upon herself to give her handmaid to try to, expedite the situation, so to speak.
Right.
I'm sure that as God told Jacob and Rebekah that there's two sons in there, and I don't think she held that to herself. She probably told her husband of this thing. And it could be that she sees her husband getting old in years and says, hey, this isn't going to happen. I got to intervene something here to expedite the thing to do what God said. And so the situations are kind of almost a parallel.
Here's the thing, though. Look at the parallel passage. The parallel passage, and who had another hand up? There's one. Go ahead.
I was just thinking that, in the beginning, it says, Jacob, he loved God, he hated that. Esau, he hated. And then, I'm also thinking, first of all, God doesn't will for brothers to not get along,
We're going to talk about that in just a moment. So we're coming back to that Esau. Jacob, I love Esau, hated. We'll come back to that in just a moment. Yeah. Go ahead. Start going.
Oh, so I was going to say that there's a lot of deception going on. I still don't understand how Isaac is mistaken a piece of whatever that was to be like a hairy arm. But, that's just my whole thing. But, it was just, the whole thing was based on deception.
Yeah.
And you're right. He doesn't, he wants us to go into his plan, but if we mess up, like he loves his children, he's not going to forsake them.
Absolutely. Faithful to the covenant, no doubt. Go ahead.
Sometimes we make these scenarios out to be precious moments, things,
Right.
And God knows the end result. He brings, regardless of the dumb stuff that we do, he's going to get us to that point.
Right.
And he forgives us all of the garbage that we do up to that point, thankfully.
Right.
But he knows. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Now notice the parallel passage. The parallel text for this in the Haftorah was you had Jonathan and David, and we're dealing with Rosh Kodesh. And David is supposed to show up for this Rosh Kodesh. He has a seat there. First day he doesn't show up. Saul's like, he thinks, oh, well, maybe David was unclean. All right, fine. Second day that David doesn't show up, he's like, okay, this is not good. So he asked Jonathan, where's David at? Oh, Dad, he asked for some time off to be with his family. I gave it to him. Now, Jonathan is the crown prince. But there's one thing we know of. Here again, there's a prophecy. There's a prophecy that prohibits this from really going anywhere. Genesis 49. Saul is a Benjamite. And the scepter has to come out of Judah. So it's never going to work for Saul's line to be the line. And Jonathan realizes now that David is the one that should be the king. Okay? 2 sons. And Jonathan, in a sense, deceives his father. And he fudges the truth a little bit to protect David's life. And Saul has become a problem because he's now throwing javelins at people. He's throwing a javelin at his own son.
This is after he's.
And he curses his own son. He curses his own son. And he realizes that Jonathan and David are in cahoots, so to speak. They have become friends.
Very good friends.
Very good friends. Okay. Now, David refuses, although he's encouraged by those around him. David says, I'm not going, even though he gets anointed to be king, he says, I'm not going to take this and do this by human means. God is going to have to take Saul down. And then there's the famous statement, I won't touch the Lord's anointed. In fact, In fact, David has a situation where they're in a cave, and Saul goes in to relieve himself, and Saul, after he relieves himself, falls asleep. He's hunting David. David flees for 11 years, going in and out of places, on Gedi, all kinds of places, because he refuses to take this into his own hands. Even though we have the promise that it's going to be Judah and not Benjamin, and that God has anointed him. But David says, I'm not going to do it. In fact, he cuts off the hem of Saul's garment, and he stands across the way from Saul, and he says, Saul, I want you to know I was this close to you. How close do you have to be to me to cut these off? Pretty close. Pretty close. I could have killed you. That's what he's saying. And then it says this, and David's heart struck him. And he says, I'm wrong for even doing that. Okay. So I'm not going to push the agenda. My point is this. There is timing in the kingdom of God. And we can push the timing to our advantage, or we can wait for God to do what he wants to do in his timing. Does that mean, will God work through all that? Yeah, absolutely. But will there be consequences? Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead.
And he did that with Saul and David. I mean, God had set up a kingdom. Well, they were going to have a king.
Yes.
God allowed that, and God gave permission for that. But they chose Saul because of
his height,
looks, his height, whatever.
Right.
Even though David was supposed to be the guy coming in.
Yeah. So here again, this foreshadowing that the scepter will arise out of Judah. The scepter is not going to arise out of Benjamin. So you guys the reason you chose Saul was because he's head and shoulders taller. He's a great warrior. The only problem is, as I mentioned in the paper, you turn on the local radio station, and we're doing Casey Kasem's top 10 countdown, and the #1 song is Saul has slain his thousands and David his 10,000s. And Saul hears that playing on the radio and goes,
Didn't go over very good.
that's not good. That's a bad song. Because that means David wants my throne.
Casey, you're going down.
Yeah, so it's one of those things that, now what happens? Saul starts throwing spears at David. And the family of Jonathan and the family of David become united. And through that whole process, Jonathan is able to actually save his family because of the alliance he has with David.
Mm-hmm.
And David waits for God to take Saul down. And Saul eventually takes himself down by his disobedience.
I was just thinking if it goes further back than that, when the people wanted a king, and the Lord said, are you want a king? All right, I'll give you a king, but you know what's going to entail.
Right.
And so it's the whole, and that's all. So there, God, was right when he said, it's going to be a big hassle. You'll see, and then this is
right. And he tells Samuel, they haven't rejected you as king; they've rejected me.
Yeah.
So when you get this king, here's what's going to get. You guys want a king, so you know why you want a king? So you can be like the other nations.
Yeah.
I didn't want you to be like the other nations.
Yeah.
I wanted you to be a distinct nation. But we want somebody to go out and come in for us. We want somebody to lead us in battle. Okay, fine, but here's what's going to happen. This guy's going to tax your land. He's going to tax your food. He's going to take your children for his army.
You see what I got to work
And this guy's going to be a problem. And by the time you get to Solomon, Solomon's a real problem. Yeah.
Could it be that in the case of Isaac, as being a father, he liked his son because he would go out and go hunting and do these things that his father would like to do at that time, and these sort of things that you would like to see your son follow in your footsteps. But in the case of Jacob, maybe Isaac looked at him as kind of a mommy's boy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And let me tell you how I think, okay, now we call it measure for measure. Okay, measure for measure. Watch what happens. The next two major episodes in Yaakov's life are this. He goes to work for Laban.
Gets a
He
shot.
wants to have Rachel, and instead he gets Leah because he's deceived. Laban deceives him. Fast forward, and his own sons eventually deceive him using a goat. Goats and coats. It's deja vu all over again. And his own sons deceive him. And he's bereft of one of his favorite son because measure for measure. So the next two major incidences in his life are measure for measure, demonstrating that what he did, God says, okay, you know what? You were willing to do this. I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you the same things that happened to you. You deceived, Laban's going to deceive you, and your own sons are going to deceive you. Measure for measure. And I would argue that maybe that would not have happened had he just said, had he not just gone into his father and said, hey, Dad, you know what? And now let's go back to the argument he could have made. Here's what he could have said. Hey, Dad, just want you to know that this son that you want to give the blessing to, he despises so much that he sold it to me.
That's what I was gonna ask.
He sold it to me. So you want to bless him?
He sold it for soup.
But he sold it for a bowl of lentils. Because he's driven by his hunger, his physical passions. I have a desire for it because of spiritual zealousness. I want it for the right reasons. And maybe, just maybe, let me suggest this, that maybe in the recesses of his mind, that Isaac knows what he's doing and says, and blesses him even though he knows that it's not a son.
Yeah. He knows it's not.
I think he's got it figured out and goes, this is the right one. This is the right one.
Wrong way, but.
Wrong way, but the right one.
He wished that Jacob would have just said, Dad.
Right. He wanted Jacob to come clean. He wanted Jacob to come clean, and I think he was giving him the opportunity to do that. But he won't do it. But he says, this demonstrates the efforts that he's willing to go to, demonstrates that he's willing, that he wants this.
Now, we start with Abraham, and he deceives, he goes and his wife, and, this is my sister, this is my sister. And then his son goes and does the same thing.
Deja vu.
And then his son goes and his sons do the same thing to him. Now we see the sins of the father are multiplied as we go down this line.
Right.
They get greater and a little more numerous and more severe as time goes on. So, I mean, there is something to say when, God says, the sins of the father are visited upon the
And notice,
sons.
yeah, you're right. Notice this too. Notice how that, this is a tough one. Because any parent, I would say it this way, every parent is going to struggle with what I'm going to talk about here in just a moment. We want to believe in our minds that we don't play favorites.
But we do.
But we do. Okay? And it's oftentimes in very subtle ways.
That time you admitted that.
Yes, I did favor you and sister. You were the favorite.
Make sure to cover that.
Yeah, please record this so that we can give me a copy. So you want in parts of you says, I should treat every child I have equally. They should both be treated, or 3 of them, 4. They should all be treated the same. But parents, because of their humanity, they favor one over the other. And they do it in subtle ways. Now, if you go back to the narrative, if you go back, you know why they do it? Because sometimes the one you favor is like you, or sometimes because they're not like you. And so, for multiple reasons, but if you go back and look, you had favoritism with Yaakov.
Favoritism.
with Isaac. Isaac favors Esau because he brings the gain. Rivka favors Yaakov. Seems to be unconditional. Okay, but they have their favorites. Fast forward, Yaakov, what happens? He ends up with 2 wives. First, Rachel, and then Leah. Leah has children all over the place. She's having children like they're going out of style.
You look at it, she gets pregnant.
But he doesn't like any of these children. Rivka, Rachel has 2 children, Yosef and Benjamin. And those children he likes because they're the children of his favorite wife. And he dotes on Yosef.
But didn't God like Abel more than Cain too?
Did God like Abel more than Cain? No, he liked his offering more.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah.
okay.
Because God is a perfect father, he can look at us all on the same playing field. But
But he only has 1 son, so he's.
we view things in skewed fashion. My point is this, that because of this favoritism, it causes anger against the other siblings. It causes the other siblings, they realize that there is inequity in the way that they're treated. And we're going to talk about this when we get to the brothers of Joseph. The brothers of Joseph finally realize this. And this is the turning point. You cannot change another person. You cannot force another person to love you or like you. You have to live with them as they are. And what does Joseph do? He wants to get the brothers, especially Judah, to the place where they will take up and stand in for Benjamin, the favorite son. And Joseph toys with them to see if they're going to say anything. Do you remember what he does? When the brothers come down there, not only does he set them in birth order, which would have been statistically impossible for anybody to do, he sets them all in birth order. And they look around at the table and go,
Weird.
Weird, very weird. We're all in birth order. Then he says to his servants, give Benjamin 5 times as much food as the others. So they bring out a plate, and they put a little plate out there in front of the other brothers, and then Benjamin gets this whole big heaping amount of food. And Joseph wants them to say to themselves, what in the world is going on? What kind of favoritism is this? Why? He just wants to hear them make some kind of complaint. And they just kind of go, They don't say anything. They don't say anything. Okay? Because what he's getting to this issue of, have you come to the place where you're willing to just realize, you know what? Our father Yaakov is never going to like you. And you have to be okay with that. Because as far as Yaakov is concerned, he only has 2 sons.
Yeah, but neither of those sons did the scepter come out of.
I agree. But the point is, well, no, it's not true. Judah. The scepter is actually going to come out of Judah.
Yeah, but that's not Joseph or Benjamin.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's actually going to come out of the child of Leah.
Yeah.
The unloved.
That's what she was saying.
The firstborn of the unloved.
Right. No, not the firstborn. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah.
Oh, it's fourthborn. Sorry.
I forgive you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad you love me that way.
I do. But the bottom line is this, that notice how that this favoritism creates animosity in the other siblings. Because the other siblings know that there's not fair treatment. They know which parent favors the other. Go ahead.
Going back to Abraham, the monkey wrench I see, unless there's something else I'm missing, is when he is shocked when Esau walks in. He says he trembles. It's like he, with Abraham, about the whole scenario. I don't know. What's or Isaac, I will.
Oh yeah, okay. But he doesn't rescind the blessing.
Could he? Could he have?
Yeah, could he have?
I think he could have. I don't know. That's an interesting question. I don't know, but I mean, he's not angry. He trembles, but he's not angry. which is interesting. Which kind of gives you this notion that and he actually gives Esau a blessing.
Not what he wanted. Yeah.
Not the one he wanted, but he gets a blessing as well.
And also, God got his 12 tribes.
Yes. And Jacob's name, now notice, watch the name change. His name was Yaakov, the heel. If you look at the heel's crooked, right? Okay. His name is changed to Yashar El, the upright of God. Okay? From Yaakov, and from that point forward, when he acts in ways that are crooked, the text will call him Yaakov. When he acts in ways that are straight, he'll be called Yisrael. And it's from that point forward that we get Yashar El, Yisrael. His name is changed. And it's from Yaakov that we have the people of Israel. And we finally get that name. Yashar El, the upright. From one who is crooked, a heel, to one who is upright. But Jacob makes some changes along the way.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's a good point, is when you're really in trouble with the Impending.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. But I told you guys the difference between my own two children. I mentioned this in the past, that they're two very different children. So while you want to treat them the same,
You really can't sometimes.
sometimes you can't. And I've said to that in some ways, the firstborn is always the special one because you had more time with them.
Not always true.
Not always true. Many times it is. And think about this: the firstborn is the link between the children and the parents. He's the closest in age to either side. So it's the firstborn who becomes the link between the children and the parents. We'll talk about that a little bit later on and why that's important. But the firstborn becomes significant throughout the book of Genesis and beyond because they're that link. They're the link between, they're the closest in age to the parents and closest in age to the other siblings. Yeah, right.
And to the firstborn was given the charge to care for the parent.
Correct. Right. Firstborn gets a double portion in order to take care of the parents.
Or a double whammy.
So, again, being the oldest had some responsibilities with it.
Brent, speaking of
Yeah.
the way you deal with your children, of our 5, the first and the last were boys. My biggest fear was that my boys would do some of the dumb things that I did when I was a boy.
And they do.
And the first didn't, the last did. And actually, the last is very close to me.
Yeah. That's fine. All right.
Brent, can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
This week, in the House of Legislature, there is a bill put before Congress called the Taylor Force Bill. What that bill does is, in our previous administration, $353 million a year was given to Hamas. It was supposed to be for humanitarian things.
Yeah.
But now we're talking about deception in our lesson today.
Yeah.
Hamas has terribly deceived us.
Oh,
That money has gone to making tunnels to get into Israel, making rockets to shoot into Israel, and one terrible thing that you and my tax dollars are paying for, we are giving lifetime pensions to the families of the terrorists who died killing Israel people. Our tax dollars are going for that.
that's
This-
insane.
This bill that's before Congress is going to stop all aid to Hamas until they stop that.
Good.
Get a hold of your congressman and tell them to support.
Okay. All right. Good work, Sarah.